Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka Podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. This is an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we talk about an anime that we've just watched and then come to discuss it, and then we want you to discuss it with us or amongst each other or maybe in your own head. Look, if you just want to talk to someone, we're here. But my name is Troy, and I do the show along with two of my favorite co-hosts, except for when we talk about Star Wars, and I get very angry. Start off, we have the Hugh to my Hefner, Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. This has been great. Great 2 weeks. Not just the anime, but also discovering Subnautica. That is an awesome game.
I'm going to have to check it out now. What you told me about it sounds really fun.
Yeah, I've actually been playing it for the past 2 years in alpha, and watching their improvements has been quite fun.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for being on the show like you are every time we do
Always.
the show. We also have the Pee-wee to my Herman, Jason.
Wait, what? If I remembered any of his quips, I wonder if anyone even knows who that is anymore.
The guy that was caught in the theater.
Oh, he had a Netflix movie like a year ago.
Did he?
Yeah, he's coming back. He's trying, and he's
Paul
doing
Rubin?
pretty good.
Yeah, and okay, it wasn't. What was it? Indecent Exposure was what he.
Yeah,
was
it was Indecent Exposure in a dirty theater.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
Jason, how are you?
I did all right. My cat, he caught his tail on something, and then he ran from it. So he had a laceration about 10 inches long along his tail.
Oh,
and
we'll be back in 30 seconds.
The term that the doctor used was some of the bone was ungloved. So he had to have a little bit of surgery. But he's now in the cone of shame. And he's high as a kite, which is hilarious.
That's awesome.
Okay. I wanted you to talk about something else, but that works too.
I saw Star Wars today for the first time.
Don't even bring it up.
And I have some problems with it, but we'll save that for behind the scenes.
Okay. On a grade of 1 to 5, what are you going to give it?
I love Star Wars, so there's a little bias. I'd give it a 7.
Out of 5?
Out of 10.
Okay.
Well, I want to throw mine out there. On a 10, I'd give it a 2.
We all know what you... Oh, that's higher than I thought you would give it.
Well, it's not quite a 1. I'm always thinking on a 1 to 5 scale, so, you know.
I could go to my normal. Do you want me to talk about Minecraft?
No. No, actually, what I wanted you to talk about was the same thing I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, and that's playing Escape Cubes and Rusty Lake games.
I was going to save that for next week, but I'll talk about my experience. You talk about yours.
Okay, I've played all the games, and they're fantastic, and I get scared by every jump scare, and they're just escape the room puzzles, but they're all slightly different, and the lore builds on itself. It's so good, guys. Most of the games, except for the 3 premium ones, are all free. They're on phone, they're on computer. If you haven't checked this out, and puzzle games are your thing, or even just something to do while you poop, check them out. They're so good.
It's a true story.
That might actually be part of my bias against that particular series is I only can play it on my computer because I don't have like an iPhone or anything like that. Okay. And so if I'm sitting in my computer, there's other games I think I'd rather play.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah, I think around game 8 or 9 is where it takes this amazing left turn into Looneyville. And it's so good.
I can see Jeremy having a hard problem with it too because it's very surreal. There's not a whole lot of science to it. There's arms that grow out of plant pots, and you're like, "Why is there an arm here?" There is, and you need to cut it out.
No, you need to give it a knife so it cuts itself off.
Oh, that's right.
See, but I mean, you see things like a sticker with the word Prozac on it on the wall, and you're like, "Oh, I get where the arm's coming from. This person's obviously on some medications. That's one of them." So it's all hallucinations, of course.
Or, hey, I give this guy a drink, and he then vomits up a screwdriver that I can then use to on another puzzle.
Arbitrary.
But no, you had to give him a screwdriver.
That's true.
Oh, God.
That makes sense logically. Okay, we need to talk about our anime, even though some of us are less eager to talk about it, as you could tell. We watched on Jeremy's pick, The Comic Artist and His Assistants.
I do need to point out, this is the first slice of life, even though I give Troy such a hard time about slice of life episode or anime. This is the first one we've done on this show, and he had to correct me, and he proved me right.
I had to go to my anime list and list every anime he thought I did, and look like, no, they're teen dramas, sure, yeah, romances, sure. There's no slice of life in my anime picks.
Who knew I'd stab you in the back?
And Jeremy went.
You son of a.
We need to do our non-spoiler reviews to let people know what we thought of it. Jeremy, you picked it, and so you get to go first.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I think that it distills down the caricature of the worst qualities of a man. And I love the way it's presented and how it's reacted to. It's great. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, there's this is a great tagline. I think it's possibly even the first sentence in the anime is the guy, and he's thinking to himself, and he says, "I want to grow up some breasts." And just the way he says it so seriously, and he's so thoughtful. And the way that scene, if you watch that little bit, if you laugh at that when he does that, you'll probably like the whole series. If you don't laugh at that, it's probably not for you. I laughed hard.
Jason, what would be your review?
I did not like it. It was halfway rapey and extremely inappropriate. I didn't find any of the jokes funny except for one that was not really a sexual joke. So yeah, I did not enjoy myself. I procrastinated so much. I watched the last 4 episodes today.
Like a few hours before we recorded this podcast.
Like I went to go see Star Wars first. It's my ballad of what I had been watching all week.
I understand now. Oof.
So I'm actually really excited because I'm in between you guys. No, wait, that came out wrong.
Is that a man-witch?
Thank God I'm in Texas.
There are elements of this anime that I enjoyed, and it does some situational comedy very, very well. I had some trouble connecting to some characters. And the big thing about this is it's an ecchi comedy, which is perverted comedy, sexual comedy. There are people who really like that. And I think for those people, this is actually going to be a good anime. I think if you're into ecchi humor, this is your thing. I had a hard, like I can see where Jason comes from. Some of it felt really rapey and some of it felt really wrong. Some of it was okay. But then it has situational comedy aspects too that I did enjoy. So there is something for everyone. And it should be mentioned, the episodes are short. They're like 15-minute episodes, and they're really just like 5-minute mini stories put together. And so that's kind of what it is. Before we go into our spoiler section, opening and closing, what do you guys think?
Standard fare. Wasn't.
Yeah. It was all right.
Didn't hate it, but it wasn't impressed.
Nothing spectacular. Although I do have to say that the way that they handled the music during the episodes, I really enjoyed. Like in moments where nothing really at stake was happening except in the characters, in one of the characters' minds, generally the main character, and the violin would kick in, and then you'd have the organ kicking in, and like the world is shattering around him. The music score really brought that up, this sense of what his psyche was. So I do think they did a really good job with that.
Generally, I like the intro song. I like the intro, I think, better than I like the song. The girls are drawn cute for anime girls, and the intro really shows off the colorful nature of this anime. The ending was very lackluster for me. Okay, so let's go on to our big meaty section. Oh gosh, we're just really turning into the curve. So this is our spoiler warning. Not that the plot's really that important in this anime, but we are going to talk about it. We are going to reveal things about it. I think even one of us came up with a theory somehow that happens.
I think the worst thing that could be spoiled is probably punchlines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have not seen it and you are interested in seeing it, this is a good time to turn off the podcast and come back later if you feel like it. But we are going to go on to the anime. This is an anime about a comic artist and his assistants. It's very literal in its title. Specifically, our main character is a comic artist of a young girl manga that features in a monthly magazine and is known for having a lot of panty shots in it. And our main character, the artist, is Aito. Am I saying that right? Aito. His name is Aito. Guys, what did you think of Aito? I want Jason to go first, because I really want to think of Aito.
I couldn't stand him every time he came on screen. He was an absolute personification of the worst things I hate about in certain men. I thought he was shy for shyness' sake, but then like super rapey in other situations. And his obsession with women's underwear got uncomfortable time and time again. And I didn't find it funny.
So when I get to mine, I'm going to call you out on something that you're going to have to explain from your review. But let's go to Jeremy.
Sure, absolutely.
So I thought that Aito was an interesting character because the way that they were trying to present him was as a caricature of what we might think is a stereotypical person that would want to draw manga like he draws. So all of the most horrible traits that you would ascribe to someone who day in and day out draws ecchi manga where they're showing underwear and showing compromising positions, what kind of person do you think they are? And I think that they took this character, Aito, and they said, hey, let's make him into the most degenerate, perverted, and yet we have to at least still make him something that you could say that he has some kind of a sincerity about him. Like, and I don't know if I want to call it innocence because he knows he's a pervert, but it's a sort of honesty about him. And so I love that for the caricature that they place on that role, because I know that, I've wondered, boy, what kind of minds does this stuff come from sometimes? And I think it's really funny to see how they present as kind of a joke idea, just what kind of mind this came from.
What kind of mind that comes from? I like that idea, I think. That at least that it shows me where a character like this would come from. I think I like that. My take on the character, to be honest, not a big fan of him. He's hard to relate to. A lot of his traits tend to be, they grind my gears. They're usually saved for like side characters that get crapped on by main characters. and when you have main characters usually that are this perverted, you're quick to establish their loyalty or their golden heart or their courage so that you have something else to root for. Like, oh, Naruto makes pervy things, but we know he never gives up. So ignore that other part and just root for him this reason. This guy, it's a long time in this show before they show a redeeming quality. A very long time.
Yeah. Part of the joy is seeing him get punished too, but carry on.
That's true. What struck me, listening to Jeremy talk, I see where you got that about the innocence. It's almost like his pervertedness is separate from his actual personality. Like it's this, he wants to see panties, he wants to grow boobs, but he doesn't. It's not a personal want. It's like this. They're detached from human bodies almost. It's not a personal satisfaction. It's like I like panties, and even when there's a scene where he's thinking about panties. See, there's guys in panties too. Like he doesn't. Yeah. It's just the panties. It's the idea of panties. It's the idea of groping boobs. It's not actually wanting to molest the woman. So that's why I wanted to call it Jason. Is he really rapey? Because he kept coming across as like he wouldn't actually do anything with the girls, but yet he kept saying things about wanting to. I want to see your panties, but he would. Like when one girl stripped down, he's like, no, cover up. Like he literally tries to stop her.
So they established that in the very first episode where he's like asks her, hey, can I grope your breasts? I need them for science. And
for my manga, because I got to draw someone groping a breast. Yeah.
Right. And she said no, and he respected that. And I understand that part. The reason I said it comes off halfway rapey, not all the way, is because he's constantly putting himself in positions to fulfill his desires, right? So he's at the lingerie shop. He takes the girls on a vacation trip so he can sleep in the same room with them, or see them in bathing suits, or grope their bathing suits while they're hanging to dry.
It was so great. So
no, great. I mean, you're spoiling half the plot.
Yeah, those are like huge jokes.
Yeah, no, but it's okay. There's not enough content.
There isn't.
They didn't come off funny for me. Yeah, and that's sure. He would never harm them, but then there's these situations and I think it's more of either my bias or a fault on the writers, because I'm looking up, for instance, Senna, who we'll get into. She's portrayed as 19 in this anime.
Mm-hmm. She's 19.
But if you did not know better, you could see her as 12, the way she's drawn.
But that's part of her character where she says people always confuse me for that, and they do go out of their way to say that's why she's a tsundere. That's why she has this harsh personality, is because she doesn't want to be seen as a child. No,
I get that.
But there's also an art style to these character drawings, and that's actually something that I liked, is that even the busty girl character isn't drawn Dragon Maid double D's big.
Yeah,
like even the busty girl, compared to what you usually see in anime. So when you see a girl like Senna who has small breasts, she's actually not that small breasted and childlike. That's how the characters, the females, are drawn. Mm-hmm. They're all shrank down a little bit. I noticed, and I like that. I like that there wasn't I can't remember the real busty dragon girl, but I was glad there wasn't someone that big bouncing through the scenes. I appreciated that.
Yeah, that was out of hand. But I just didn't like. I didn't like how overt he was with his perviness and how he made all the girls feel so uncomfortable all the time. But then on the other hand, I didn't like how they stuck around. I didn't like how they continued to put up with this crap. I didn't.
Yeah. They do establish very early on in one of the scenes where Ashisu. Yeah, Ashisu says, "Oh, he's a puppy," and he's like, "I'm a puppy," and he's so happy. So, very early on, we do have established that. Think of this guy as a bad, happy dog, and when you do that, I don't know if that had some of the effect for me, but oh, I am, and so I saw when he had the bathing suits in the scene that you're talking about. It reminded me so much of what do you think's going to happen if you put a dog outside because he's annoying you and he won't stop bothering you, but you have all your underwear outside. That dog is going to grab the underwear and he's going to just lay there and mess with them. And so for me, that was and his look and
There's also the idea that in any anime, when you have such an ecchi character and the characters don't all kick him to the curb, there's an amount of unbelievableness that you have to get over, because there's a lot of animes have a side character that'll be pervy, but they let him stay in the group. And why are the women putting up with the fact that every time he gets close to them, he dives into their cleavage and hugs them? Grapefruit.
Not this guy, but some of the others, yeah.
Right. But the guy in My Hero Academia with the purple balls on his head.
Grapes.
Why are they putting up with that? Why is he not being suspended? But it's anime, it's etchy humor, so and I think there's a little bit of Japanese culture finds that humorous. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of it. But I kind of agree with Jason, especially, there's it's hard not to think about current events going on in Hollywood right now and seeing a boss tell his employee, grope your breast in front of me. My first thought was, oh my gosh. What did we ask?
Not Weinstein.
Yeah, who's the lawsuit lawyer going to be here?
Right. But again, this character also doesn't then take that and then go stand in the corner and do bad things.
Exactly.
He does. There is an earnestness and goodness to him, like Jeremy talked about. But to me, it was so his perfectness and his good nature were so disconnected. It felt like they were separate things to him, like two different realities almost.
I think it's also worth mentioning, just so that you guys understand why I think this character is so funny too, is like, I had Tanya watch several scenes with me, and every time all she would do is she laughed. She thought it was great, thought it was very funny. She never said anything about it being rapey. But she did say, "That's you, Jeremy." And so I looked at that and I was laughing because I sincerely started thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, so I am handsy with my wife, nobody else, of course, but, so I am handsy. But there's this sense of like, what if you took that personality and you exaggerate it into a caricature that's all there is, you know,
maybe
as the most,
like it.
Yeah, you can't stand me.
No. I can't stand caricatures. Like caricatures of anything, whether it's drawn or a personality or whatever. That overblown caricature stuff, like I don't find interesting.
So two things I need to bring up. One, I actually, when I first watched the first couple episodes, I thought Jeremy was trolling, especially me after having to watch Your Name. And I was like, am I going to have to talk to him? Like, you control our audience. You control me every day.
You said that. I remember that being in the chat.
But Jeremy honestly likes this anime. And that's fine.
It's great.
There's no rule that you can't pick a bad anime or or an anime that could be bad. Everything about this pick is fine. But I went to look at reviews thinking like, man, I bet this anime is just trashed.
It's got 4 OVAs.
It's got good reviews. These people are like, man, this is some good ecchi humor. And so I think that's a big thing. There are people who like this style of humor and that this is a good source of it.
Yep.
So I had a question about Aito for you guys. How do you think his character would change? And not to be too adult about this, but if he had sex, if he lost his virginity, and if he wasn't the dog chasing the car and caught the car,
was it good, successful sex, or was it failure sex?
I don't really want to get into what those mean.
Just in the sense of, I could see him going two ways. He would either be like, I love it and I want more and I'm worse than I ever was before, or he would be like, my world is shattered and I don't want to drop panties anymore.
I got a better question for Troy to clarify that question.
Okay.
Is it due to a stable relationship, or did he go out and find a one-time thing?
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, I guess, man, I don't know.
It makes the difference.
You open a can of worms, Troy.
Okay, in my head, I guess I ship him and Ashisu.
I do too.
Because I think that's the one he actually cares about. I think it's clearly shown. And so I see them being together. And when that happens, and when that, you can touch my panties anytime. You can anytime
Nobody else's.
when a woman lets you into that inner part of her life, would this manicness of his just kind of die down and he would just be a nice guy? And because there's almost a lot of this, like he's built something up so high in his head that it's this fanaticism that shouldn't really even be there.
So there is this is a real thing. I don't know if it's just Japanese, or I think it is just Japanese. Sometimes young Japanese couples die when they have sex the first time. This is real. Look it up. Because it has been built up into such a thing that their system goes into shock. And so I don't know. You could be right about him building it up to the point where it's just unbelievable. But if he survived, God, that's horrible.
Jason, you want to do a little bit better than that, please?
It really depends on if he's got a disorder or not, because apparently there is an actual medical condition. Well, not medical condition, but
actually look it up.
Yes, I did. There's a Wikipedia page. It's a paraphilia. It's considered a paraphilia, and if that's his thing, like you said, because it's detached from people, I don't think.
Oh, you looked at that.
I don't think that would go away, no matter what kind of relationship he was in.
Okay.
Because he's got a fascination with the object, not a person wearing that object.
Then he'd probably still have a hamper full of panties and draw manga about panties.
I like that wording. It's detached from the person. Like even his love of boobs, his love of panties, his love of all things sexual.
Very objectified.
Yeah, it's not Ashisu he wants. It's just the fact that Ashisu also happens to have these things that he objectifies and wants.
Which I think that the final ending credit song really, really makes clear.
Yes. As good as it is.
Hey, that song was awesome. Just for the listeners, I sent that song before they even knew that I was picking this anime, and I'm like, this song's amazing. You have to see the song.
I didn't finish it.
I didn't. But I will say that I should save it for the end. But
I finished it like 3 times. It's great.
That's too bad.
Song works better after you've watched the anime. I don't think that song... The anime earns that song, and when it comes off, without it's a context. Huge payoff. Yeah, without context, it's like this is just weird. With context, it's like, wow, way to save that for your ace in the hole.
You're right.
We need to talk about his first assistant, whose name is Ashisu. She is a girl who wants to make her own manga, but she works for Aito in the meantime and helps him draw panels. I don't know much about creating it, but I assume she just like draws the easy stuff. And she's kind of the object of his affection too, even though like every girl he's nice to. And like Jason said in this first anime, he turns to her and is like, "Hey, I don't know what it looks like when a breast is groped. Can I grope yours? No. Will you grope yourself?" Like, you get
I guess.
She's my favorite character, but I still have issues with her. But I want to hear what you guys think first. Jeremy, what do you think?
I really like Ashisu. I think that she's got the most character and development, and my theory revolves around Ashisu as well, which I'll mention later. I really like the fact that she has more than anyone, well, maybe not more than anyone, but more than the other two, a reason to be there. And that is that even though, he's annoying, he's pervert, and he's obnoxious, he's her sensei, and she is learning how to draw because he is a good artist. And so she values the skill that he has. And so she wants that, and she's willing to put up with his crap in order to get that skill, as long as he doesn't cross certain lines. And I think it's great because, there's so many scenes where she's ignoring him and ignoring whatever's going on around them. And that cracks me up so bad because that it's only because of a numbness that she's dealt with so much garbage and stupidity from him that she's like, I don't see what you're doing. I'm not even looking. I don't care.
There's a scene where he's doing something extreme. She walks in and just walks past it.
Yeah.
and that exemplifies that the best.
Yep.
I definitely thought she was the most interesting character out of the bunch. And so I agree with Choi in that respect that she's, I agree. Her deadpan ness about her was probably the best part of this anime, the way she dealt with his perviness. But it really felt like she was the main character after like taking the entire thing into consideration, because this was her struggle. Like he already had it made. His only struggle was meeting deadlines, which is normal work. She actually had some sort of goal that she was attempting to accomplish. And you're right. I think the biggest reason she stuck around is because, when she started for him, she had zero skill, and she was probably looking for some sort of apprenticeship, and he was willing to pay her and teach her. So this is probably the most positive thing I'll say about this anime, is that this character was done well.
Like I said, my favorite character, for all the reasons you guys mentioned, the arc and her deadpan delivery of whenever he says something extreme, and then she just is like, no, or that's stupid, you're a creep. And her delivery is really good.
Okay, so I want to say something really quick also. This is the second time I've seen it. I was trying to just watch whatever. I was hitting the random button on Crunchyroll, and this popped up. And I was during that, a month ago, when I was watching 8-9 different seasons of anime. This was one of the seasons. And I was actually watching it while I was doing some work in a 3D design program. And so I wasn't really paying attention. And it wasn't until about halfway through that I started noticing really funny stuff. So I actually missed 50% of the first episodes until the second viewing. So I actually missed this part too. So,
Actually, I retract my statement about him respecting her space because she said no, and he's like, "Oh, well, can you do it yourself?" And then he starts watching her, and then like reaches up and grabs her.
I'm
then,
sorry.
So, no, that was rapey.
Oh yeah, but it was funny because it was great. It was funny. Yeah. That doesn't bother me at all.
Again, the first couple episodes really were hard to watch.
Yeah,
it reaches a certain point where it backs a little off the ecchi humor. It goes to more situational comedy, and I'll mention it. I'll mention the first time I laughed. I watched a couple episodes without laughing. After the groping incident, Mihari, his editor, shows up demanding better work from him. She is a tsundere character with flat breasts and tiny short hair who usually is wearing a suit. She is an old high school friend of his. Probably my second favorite character, but what do you guys think?
I like the way she was drawn. It brought a nice not plateau, but just like a nice balance to what was happening on screen. Because normally when she came in, she put the business end of things on the end of her fist and just beat the living crap out of him. Which I never felt bad for him, but she has a soft spot in his heart, but hers is a little more earned because of her past with him. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm still in Troy's boat of, well, if you're being approached in this manner at work, probably shouldn't work here.
The only I'm gonna let Jeremy go first. Sorry.
Okay. So Mihari, I thought, carried the second, well, probably the most masculine behavior out of everybody there, more than Aito. And so I thought it was very interesting because there are no other males in this anime at all, and other than Aito. And so seeing Mihari always in the business attire, always in the slacks and everything, and having her hair cut in the way that she cut it, which later we learned was part of her character development before the anime. It made her a very, like you say, Jason, I saw the same thing. She was almost like the grounding factor, in the way that Ashisu was, as far as like the plot and story. Mihari seemed like the grounding factor for characters to me. And also, I thought that initially she was kind of boring for that reason to me. Like the only shtick she had was, I have tiny breasts and I'm really ashamed about it. And I'm going to punch you because you upset me. And so I react violently to everything that happens. And while I enjoyed it, after a while I was like, come on, you got to have something more. I need some more character here. And I think that they delivered on that with her backstory. And so I really liked her from then on.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Her backstory really makes me like her. Her scenes are a lot less cringe to me, especially later on, because she's less unwelcoming of it. She reacts. I would phrase it as tsundere wants it. So I don't mean like she's asking for it because of what she wears, but she does have affection for him, and whenever she thinks he's asking for affection from her, a lot of times she says yes, and he doesn't realize that. We get a few scenes in the backstory, but even in regular scenes where she actually kind of is attracted to him and probably would be willing to have a relationship with him, if it, under the right circumstances. So when she reacts negatively to these things, unlike Ashiso, it's out of like, oh, I'm so embarrassed because I'm a tsundere and I'm going to hit you. But there's also a part of her that likes it.
Mm-hmm. It's physical contact.
Right. And so it's less cringy than the other girl. Mm-hmm. So I did like her. But I think, though, the thing I liked about her, again, was the backstories. The backstories were very well done. I like them.
Yep, me too.
So, yeah, she comes in and they talk about dreams. She punches him. There is a scene here that's really funny about... He's asking how much of a panty flash should I show?
I love it.
And his assistant is like, why don't we just not? And he's like, oh, so people can imagine the panties. Yeah. That's a genius move. It just shows that he's incapable of looking at the world in a non-pervy way.
Right, like implicit through leaving something out, right? At the end of this first mini-sode, right, this first mini episode, it's like 5 minutes, they end with an ending line that says it doesn't really matter, or it really doesn't matter. And I think that is there because they're trying to tell you there is nothing that matters in this entire anime. Be ready for that. Like, this is nothing but silly nonsense.
And by the way, the word minisode is trademarked by Baka Baka Baka. It
that's right.
Used in context for other things.
TM.
When the first episode ends, I was like, wait, only half my notes are filled out. Did I just not write notes? And I'm like, oh, this is only like 13 minutes long. Yep. Oh, that's going to be different. There is one.
Cutting out intro and outro, it's nearly 10 minutes long.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. It reminds me of like the 90s cartoons, right? Like in time. I'm not saying content. I'm just saying time, where you've got like Animaniacs and you've got like Ed, Ed and Eddie and Cow and Chicken and all those where it's like, yeah, you get like these little tiny. It taken in that context, I liked that.
I like that it was half the length of a normal anime.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah, but then there's one other scene about him shopping for women's underwear and running into Mahari, and he's like, "Hey, but look, I got a flat-chested bra just for you." And
it's okay. I loved this because it made sense in the universe. What he was doing in the established storytelling and everything, right? She comes in and she's going to do her shopping because this is where she goes shopping. And why would she encounter him here? Because he needs reference material. Now, does he already have enough? Probably. He's got a hamper full of underwear.
Yeah, but does it stop him?
Right? Yeah. This is his hobby. So he's got an armload of panties and bras. Like you said, this is situational humor, and they're presenting characters in these situations so that it can't make perfect sense. Wow. It was just so funny. It blew my mind.
When I watched this scene, I was still trying to figure out what are we watching. And I mean, there is a thing of like, he just is like, oh, you're shopping for underwear. I'm shopping for underwear. We have a common interest. Let's just do this together without even realizing what he's actually asking and how bad it is.
Thank you. That's where I wanted to go.
that probably I would chuckle at maybe if I watched it a second time. But again, I'm watching this and I'm like, he just asked a girl to grow up her breast. Why is he shopping for underwear? Now he's handing this girl this bra. Like, what is this guy?
Right.
I feel like they could have introduced him a little better to warm me up to him before they started cranking his dial up to 11.
I could see that, but I don't know if they would be able to do that in this short, snippety anime.
But they do. There is a scene later that they do. Anyway, we'll get there.
They might have had, like, if they switched some things around, maybe gave a little bit more of the backstory ahead. I don't know.
The next episode starts with them getting a new assistant who can't draw at all, but she is very curvy, so he lets her stay. This is the character Rina. I don't like the character Rina. I don't understand why the character Rina is in this anime. You could remove her. She didn't even have any plot lines. You guys can go ahead. I'll just go sit over here.
I agree with Troy. She was the comic relief to a comedy that didn't need a comic relief. And she was also the obsessive fan that
how obsessive was she? In the intro she has pictures of him, but then there's no storyline that builds on that like we see, like, she's been following his work for years. He cut his hair and keeps it. Like, I don't know how.
No, there's nothing sinister. No,
just everything that all three of the other girls are repulsed by, she finds cute, and I found that disgusting.
And encourage.
Yeah, I she didn't feel realistic in any sense, so I couldn't connect on a humor level with her because I didn't see that kind of character existing, let alone rooting and or working for him.
So. I think that if we're going to look at this anime and as at this man as like a caricature of a manga artist, everybody has fans. There are fans except for Baka Baka Baka. Everybody else has fans, and so you're gonna find a fan, and you know these fans they come in all flavors. Some of them might be obsessive and crazy, like Rina. There are women that go after criminals, mass murderers. There are crazy fans. So, I mean, as far as like a real world application, I could see her existing as a character, as a fan that makes no sense, is illogical, finds the things that he does great and praiseworthy. I agree with you guys that she didn't contribute anything of value to the anime as far as like any substance, but I thought that she was the tropey ditzy airhead, and that was her sole purpose, was to be like, I'm the big bouncy one that is in every anime, and I don't need to have a mind. I don't need to be a character that contributes. I'm just here to be like, yeah, perv, go, yeah. And she did express that in many, many of the episodes where like she gets dressed up in a bunny suit, and what's she doing to keep him motivated to write? Every time he gets tired, he's like, I'm going to fall asleep. She like presses a boob up against him, and then his nose shoots out blood, and he's awake for a while. Like that whole sequence was
Jeremy, the way you tell it is funnier than watching it. Like I'm smiling at your enjoyment of the scene, and I'm getting mad. Like, no, I didn't enjoy this.
So funny. It's so funny, just the way that they draw. Like, okay, nosebleeds are in not all anime, but nosebleeds are in a lot of anime, and they're not always a punchline to this effect, but they go with this punchline again and again. He's supposed to be drawing like these perfect inked things, and all of a sudden blood just shoots out, and you know it's going all over his papers and everything, and it's just...
He would have died from blood loss by the end of the night.
Yeah! I mean, that was so bad. So, Rinna's contribution, yeah, I totally agree with you guys. She didn't have character value, but I see where they put her, and she kind of added a sort of complexity in flavor for the anime that maybe filled in a hole that would have been missing had she not been present, I think.
She was so enamored with him. Why didn't he land a relationship with her?
I think it's that sort of innocent, enamored nature. Like, she's obviously crazy.
She does. The thing I got from her is that she doesn't like love him. She doesn't want to be with him physically, right. But she gets him and is like, yeah, I get that you have this total objectification of sexual things, and I encourage that because it makes good manga and inspires me, and I encourage your horrible behavior, but I don't want to, like, it's not a love. It's not on her part. She wants to be a part of it. It's just like, hey, me pressing on my boobs makes you draw faster. Awesome.
It works. Yay.
It doesn't mean I want to give you my boobs.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and there's also
now we're saying boobs on them.
There's also a scene where she's in that bunny outfit and she's actually shopping for groceries at the store, and they make it a point to tell people around her, like, are you crazy? Are you nuts? She is. She's completely aloof. She doesn't think like what I would call normal human beings. And so it makes sense why she's as crazy as Aito is.
Okay. So Mihari, the next storyline, Mihari yells at him for low ratings, and so Ashisa is like, hey, what if we gave the main character a rival? And he panics and because he sees himself as the main character of the manga that likes the girl, and so the idea of adding a rival means there's a rival to him. And so when he starts to draw it, he then just kind of breaks down and he's like, I can't add a rival.
Well, and I love how he's like, he's sitting there and Mihari's like, okay, well, what else can we do then? Because you have to make it more interesting. And he's like, interesting panties? And she says, what are those? He goes, I don't know. I don't even have the slightest clue. And I laughed so hard because I'm like, he has nothing. There is no substance to his anime. Like, we may be sitting here looking at this anime and being like, there's no substance to this. But the anime that he's writing is even worse. Like, he has no substance. There's a point where he's like, oh, my anime or my manga is failing. Why is it failing? It's bountiful with panties. There's fan service everywhere. There's panties left. There's panties right. There's panties in the center. Why is it failing? Why is it the last in his charts? And like, that is how he thinks. And so seeing that interaction was just, God, I laughed so hard at that.
I've never heard someone have so much joy from something so inane.
It's so great.
I'm just going to keep going. And then the last storyline of this episode is a flashback of how he met Ashisa and when she comes to
well, you didn't mention that he killed off the rival because he knew the protagonist wouldn't have any girls left. He couldn't beat the rival.
Right. Okay. And so then she shows up at his work and he spills tea on her and then he tries to clean her in classic anime fashion.
Yeah, that was classic.
Breast. And this is where she says, he's like a puppy, I'll stay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I still.
Well, and I think it's because like different people evaluate things different ways, and everybody has a different measure of what they're willing to endure and what they're willing to take. We don't really know what her history is, but if we look at her little sister who's 13 years old and is a big pervert, it makes me wonder what her home life is and what she's put up with. So it may be that she...
Please don't bring up the sister.
Stand this.
I'm already cringy when we had to bring her up. Let's
well,
bring up the sister.
yeah.
Let's just keep going. Let's keep going. Next episode, his porno mags fall out of a cupboard, and Ashi realizes that the women on them look like her and Rena, and so she forces him to tear him up, but he can't because he cares about them so much, so she just tears him up in front of him, and he cries all
farewell, my dirty Ashisu and dirty Rena in my dirty books. So great. Okay.
Yeah, move on.
I mean, there's no argument for what you find as humorous. You know, everyone has their different buttons. Mine has not been pushed up to this point.
Did you catch how he was talking about the dating sim that he was playing, and it was Magical Momoko-chan? It's probably Madoka Magica.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I did catch
that. The next one is gosh. Okay, speaking of a little rapey, this one kind of went off the rails. This is where Ashisu gets sick, and he decides to take care of her, and the best way to take care of her is to strip her down.
Yeah.
And then he goes for the full frontal, and she smacks him. Basic. The punchline is, you know, after actually taking care of her and bringing her food in the morning, and she's respecting him, she's like, you know, thank you, sensei. He goes in for the kiss.
Yeah.
There is a different interaction between him and her and all the other girls, because he does genuinely want a relationship with this girl. So anytime she's nice to him, he thinks he's broken through to that next level, and ends up with, in this case, food in his face.
Hot food. Yeah. And again, it's the situational humor where if he doesn't do these things that are so shocking and out of the comfort zone, then you don't have the situation to have this humor. And in some ways, a lot of the humor reminded me of how like South Park or Family Guy would have shocking scenes where you'd be like, that is totally inappropriate. Why am I laughing? And this one just kind of kept to one topic with it, but it did very similar things, I think.
It's going to be interesting to see you defend this 12 times in a row.
Well, I do have to say that it's not, it's not flawless. I will definitely say that. There are some things I won't defend.
So the last part of this episode is when they get the super assistant, which I guess is like when things are really bad deadline wise, you bring in this assistant to really get things done, and she's fully trained, but apparently is having trouble getting work.
So I don't know much about manga writing, but this was actually very interesting to me, because if this is what really happens, that's really cool. It's like a whole freelance system.
Well, they made it fairly clear that there are tons of very talented artists, but they cannot do manga because they're not good storytellers. And that's what Ashisu suffers from, is he's trained her to be this amazing artist, and she can do her own manga. She just can't tell a story to save her life. And that's kind of where this character also confesses that she can't storytell either, but she's amazing with backgrounds, and she can do entire panels without the main characters and stuff very quickly.
So let's talk about this character, Senna. Jeremy, she's your favorite, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so when we were talking about favorite characters, I had to redefine the word favorite as what made me laugh the most, because it's kind of weird. None of the characters are I don't know. I don't have the same connection. Yeah, I don't have the same connection that I do to these characters that I would have in something with a plot.
Right.
And so, but yeah, Senna made me laugh the most. Some of the situational humor with her was hysterical. I do have a soft spot for tsundere. I really enjoy when a character is presented and they've got this really hard outer shell, and then once you get through that outer shell, they're actually a really sweet person. And she fits that to the bill. I thought it was a weird inconsistency, like when she was drunk. And that was like too hard for the humor for me. But overall, some of the humor scenes with Senna are my absolute favorite. As a character, she just seems like a regular tsundere. There doesn't seem to be anything spectacular about her.
But isn't Mihari already filling that role in the anime?
Yeah, but I think Mihari's fitting the masculine tsundere role. At least in the modern time, Mihari. The old Mihari wasn't even being a tsundere when she was being more feminine. And so this character, I think, is presenting the feminine tsundere that is, also the BDSM tsundere. So.
Jason, thoughts? You have to talk in the podcast.
I'm so irritated.
Is this worse than Kisniver? Come on. Wait for it.
No.
Yes! Yes!
Okay. So I hate this one for different reasons, but I don't hate it as deeply.
It's just because it's shorter. That's not fair.
I think that's a big reason. But also, there's only really one thing to hate it for, and that's the humor I didn't find funny. This character was all right. I didn't really enjoy her interactions. I thought the thing is that she hated being treated like a child, but he would do nothing but treat her like a child. And when I say treat her like a child, not like you treat an adult like a child. Like petting her head and telling her how cute she was and what a good girl she was, and it was just creepy. I did not like his interactions with her. The BDSM thing was kind of out of left field. What's the drinking age in Japan?
I don't know.
Because if she's drawn as 19, she is full on wasted when she comes to his house that one episode. Which we'll get to.
Candy. She wasn't actually drinking; she was eating candy.
Liquor. Yeah, it was liquor candy. That's how they explain it. It doesn't mean that it's enough liquor candy. Like maybe the box was empty.
In Food Wars, they drink grape juice and then get wasted.
That's true.
It's just that, hey, I need a drunk character. I chose to make teenagers. I'm just going to make this excuse. I don't know if that's a culture there. I think it's just
there's not a lot of excuse here because they literally show on the box, hey, this contains alcohol. So anyways, no, I liked that she was kind of the character to swoop in and save the day when it came to the deadlines. And she had a decent stalwart personality, but I didn't like her and her interactions with Aito. She did. There was when we get to it, I'll mention it. We're not there yet.
What I find interesting about this character is it really showed that he treats these 3 or 4 females differently. With Ashiso, this is someone he wants to be affectionate with. This is someone he's romantic about. Mihari, I think he sees as a sister type. And Senna, he kind of pulls into a daughter role. And yes, there is a perviness to each one of these. He still cares about Mihari's boob growth, but not because he wants to sexualize her, just because he cares about boobs so much. And so that carries over to Senna. But he whenever Senna has a problem, he wants to take care of her. Whenever, he wants to dress Senna up. And even there's a scene where she gets nude and he tries to help cover her up without seeing it for himself. There is a very different relationship with this character than the other ones. And I find that interesting. The joke that she has no strength whatsoever didn't land with me.
I loved that.
It was just a bit.
The reason I thought it was funny was because they always have the little character in anime have this unbelievable amount of strength to do the things that Mihari does, like pick him up and pile drive him behind her. Right? They do that with little characters in anime so frequently. So it caught me off guard when, she goes to beat him up and he's like, wow, it doesn't hurt. I was like, Oh, that's good.
This character also goes through the worst stuff because of her weakness. That she's the one who always gets into the worst situations because she literally can't get herself out of them. The writers kind of torture poor Senna. But I prefer Mihari's Suderi character to Senna. So whenever Senna was like, I'd rather have a Mihari scene, and I could never get over that. And not that there is story beats with Senna that I did enjoy and actually did laugh at, but for the most part, she was very low on the rankings of these characters.
It was inconsistent because he wanted to treat her more like a daughter character, but then when he's giving her a piggyback ride, he comments how he got to feel the undersides of her legs. Like that's.
But again, it's not. Oh my god, I'm so horny because I touched the underside of her legs. It's like, hey, underside of legs are great things to touch, and I got to touch yours because you happen to have them, and also I did take care of you and brought you home. Like those are somehow still separate things for him.
Maybe I took the thing wrong because I took it as a ecchi satisfaction for him.
She comes over and to help, but she can't open the ink jar, so she leaves in a huff, and they find out that she has no strength. The next episode, she comes back demanding pay, but then she realizes he's not going to pay, so she uses a whip to hit him. Basically, she just wants to torture him, but turns out he doesn't have any strength, and then he's like, "Oh, being whipped is so fun." That's the whole thing.
The reason this was funny was because it was a flip-flop on the joke. In a lot of anime, that's where it would end. Like, right? The girl is tough and she beats the crap out of him and he gets his punishment. To see him turn around and be like, oh, your punishment doesn't hurt me. It's actually turning me on. I like this.
I saw this joke coming a million miles.
I didn't. It caught me off guard and I loved it.
With as much as he's perverted and with they already established that she was weak. So when she pulls out the whip, you're like, oh, it's going to turn into a sexual thing. And then he immediately bends over with his butt in the air to get. He
didn't bend over. She knocked him down. He landed facing that way.
But
he did wiggle it. Yes.
The story moves the character into the on all fours position, and it's like, yep, here we go. Yep.
I belly laughed at this. It was great.
Okay.
Each their own, I guess.
Even as far as like it being something where girls wouldn't like it either. I mean, again, I had Tanya brought in, and I know some girls like it because she laughed.
Oh yeah, I don't think this is only a gender thing. Like, only a sick perverted guy would like this. There are
sick perverted girls apparently too.
I think there are people who like ecchi humor, and this is probably landing. So far for me, it has not. It's going so heavy on it. And like I said, I've already explained.
I see it like the difference between Troy and I when we talk about silly humor. I compare that in a direct translation is with ecchi humor. I don't really find ecchi humor all that funny, but you do. And Troy finds the silly humor more funny than I do. And
Jason just doesn't laugh
at anything.
You set yourself up for that?
That's not true. That's not true. Do you know when he laughs? Gory death scenes.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
to each his own.
It's amazing that Jeremy can pick this anime, love it so much with all its issues, and Jason comes out still the creepy one of the.
I had to manipulate that.
Yeah. I like there is the next scene is about making a mascot character for the anime, and we find out Ashiso loves mascot characters, so Eito becomes devoted to creating them. He even makes doll versions, which doesn't pass the mustard test first. So Rena helps make them, and then when Rena's is more popular than his, he storms out into the rain or whatever. Yeah. But he finds a cat, and he realizes the cat looks like the mascot character he made. So he dresses up the cat like the mascot character, who will now look like this mascot character for the rest of the anime, and brings it home, thinking, yeah, this will get her affection, only to realize now all the affection is going to the cat, whose name is Branya.
And you guys get that play on words, right?
I don't.
Bra and then the sound of a meow in Japanese they say nya.
Because he has a bra for a hat.
Bra, yeah.
Jason's favorite character.
Yep, because he was the only one that didn't talk, and he tried to show some modesty with Senna. So
that's true, he did.
And he was cute, even with a bra on his head.
He was.
We get our first flashback of Mihari, and when she was in high school with Eito, and she was a failed artist. She wanted to be an artist herself, but failed, and kind of shows how she's going to go into the editor business. But she sees his drawings and starts encouraging him and inspiring him, and you can tell there's like a connection forming. And then he reveals, "I just love drawing panties," and it just breaks her heart.
This was great because when she sees him drawing, she doesn't really see what he's drawing. She just sees, like, I don't know what she saw, but it couldn't be the panties yet because she was commenting like, "Oh, wow, you're a great artist. You must be drawing manga." But then later he's standing outside, and up until this point, every interaction with him, he's been suave and debonair, and his voice is low, and he speaks. There's like a different melody playing when he speaks, and there's twinkles and sparkles. You're clearly getting the girl infatuation,
right?
Version
Very much
of
romantic
him.
Anime build up,
and it's so great because he's giving his spiel of, "One day I want to share the things I love with everyone through manga," which is great. It touches her heart. It's exactly what she wants. And then she sees his art, and yep, that's Aito. And it's just, I thought the timing was very, very good with that.
What I did, I still haven't laughed at this point. What I did like about this was it finally let me know why Mihari is. So she recognizes his raw talent. She's not talented herself. She's hitched her wagon to this star, and kind of vice versa. They. So at least it explained her character at this point.
Yeah.
Oh man, the next episode 5, guys. He's last place in the ratings now, and it turns out that he is overusing panties, which does not compute with his brain.
No.
So he flees out to a playground with children.
Yeah. Gets on a swing set.
Jason is going to rage soon.
I loved seeing the parents. Like in this whole scene, there's parents in the background with the children.
Staring at him like
and the parents are always like holding their children close, staring at this guy. And I was just cracking up so bad because I was like, yes, this is the situational humor that a normal person would never get in. And the only reason that it happens is because this guy's a freak. And it's really fun. Go on.
A young girl comes up to him holding the magazine that his manga is featured in and mentions, his work, that she's a fan or something. And then she starts teasing him about the panties, and then he gives her some candy and she sits in his lap.
Okay.
And starts again teasing him about his like for panties and how it's ruining his story and making him realize he's messed up. And then it inspires him to change his ways, right? To be better. And then we find out who this character really is, which is his chief editor, Minano. And we need to talk about her, but real creepy vibes. There's no way to get through this.
I had the same problem when I saw this. I was like, where are you going? Where are you going, anime? What are you doing? And then when she said the line, "The more Moimi-chan's charm grows, the more the charm of Moimi-chan's panties will grow," it got me. That was great because it was such ridiculous wisdom. Like, these words were spoken deadpan as if they were Yoda wisdom, right? Like, as if this is distilled, the most valuable, precious wisdom that you might get. And he treats it like it is, but it's the most ridiculous, stupid, inane thing. And and yet it strikes home with him. And he's like, "Oh my God, all this time, you're right. How could I let them go?" And he's like screaming about the apology. Everybody's freaking. From that
but Jeremy,
point,
can you understand that I'm so uncomfortable with this scene that no joke is going to land? They could tell the funniest joke in the world, and I'm so uncomfortable with what I just saw that it's
yeah. I think the issue is again, the cultural thing. Like I'm going to talk about it too when we get to the 13-year-old little sister of Ashisu. There's a cultural thing there too, because in Russia they do co-ed bathing like that. Uncles, nieces, older brothers and stuff. You know, when you're wearing a swimsuit, it's not a big deal. There was nothing unusual about that part. This character was clearly a character to make you uncomfortable and poke fun at the types of character that she represents. And she goes, like, she is the most perverted one. I mean, they're obviously trying to do that.
Jason, do you want to weigh in on the scene, or you just want to go straight to the character, or you can do both?
This scene was not only made me feel extremely uncomfortable. I was just wondering why no one was calling the cops on him. A single guy going into a playground with no children, and then a child-looking character sits in his lap and lifts her shirt as if she's joking that she's going to show his panties. And then he's screaming. And then he's screaming about this apology about the panties he's drawing. Like, what? Why have the cops not been called? I did not find any of the jokes funny, and I found this scene inappropriate.
Okay, so now for the character Minana, because we do come back to this character multiple times. She's the chief editor. She's his big boss. She's Mahari's boss. What did you think of this character?
It didn't land with me. She's this pervy girl that manipulates a Shisu in a weird way, and I didn't find her funny, and yeah.
Just about every scene that I saw her in was uncomfortable. I totally agree with that. I actually went and looked up, and I was looking everywhere. I was like, how old is this character? How old is this character? And I can't find a decisive age, but the way that they place her in the shots makes me think that she is the same age or close to the same age as the 13-year-old sister. I do not get the impression she's an adult. But,
really?
Right. But in anime,
she's a chief editor.
I know. And that's where I think part of the joke comes in. But in Anime DB, her age is listed as young adult, which goes from 20 to 40. But there's no information that I could find that was based on.
She looks very similar in age, if you will, to Senna. So I assume she was in her 20s.
Yeah,
I assume she was adult just because of her status.
But obviously in the park, she looked like
a kid. 10,
12-year-old.
I initially assumed that she was an adult in my first viewing of the anime. But on watching it the second time, in the last episode where they're all together, I got the impression that she was younger, and I could be totally wrong, but I don't know if there's any information out there to establish whether this is true or not. But again, I think if she is a kid, it's playing towards that trope of the child that is out of place, the child that is in a position that they should logically have no right to be in because they don't have the world experience. They don't have the time to develop the artistic talent unless they're some kind of prodigy. And in the animes, they always do that where they're like, hey, this child is a prodigy, and so we're going to make them hyper weird in one way or another. And they tried to do that, I think, with this character Minata. If they made her as a child, if she's an adult, then she's just hyper weird and is supposed to give off the vibe, but doesn't fit all of the markers. But yeah, she definitely made me uncomfortable, especially with the Ashisu scene and the park scene.
So aside from her ecchi moments, which is most of her moments, I guess, the way I didn't like her scenes, but I kind of wish there was more of her in this anime. I kind of wanted to build her character and make her more than just an ecchi joke, which they never do. She has like 2 other scenes and they're both ecchi jokes. But I was kind of interested in like, how is this the chief editor, and why are you letting? She seemed to have insight into like this whole working and interested in their relationships, and like she wanted to join in the fray, but didn't. And it just kind of left me like, what element would you bring to this anime?
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird thing to say when I also said, God, I hated the scene that she debuts in. But it is what it is. After that scene, we get a great scene. No, we didn't. Actually, this one isn't bad. It's Ashisu getting her work rejected for the first time that we see. And this is where we learn that she wants to become her own artist, and she has the skills, but she can't quite make the story. I also liked Aito's realization that when she does reach that level, she'll be gone, and him being like, "Oh, what if we always work together?" She's like, "Maybe."
Actually, one thing I appreciated about that scene was he goes, "What? Do you see me as a pervert?" She's like, "What? What do you think I?" Of course. What else do you think I see you as?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He asks that question a lot. Like, do you see me as a pervert? And like yes.
Yeah, like he can't believe people see him as that. But when he's questioned, like, are you a pervert? Yes, I'm a pervert. He reminds me a little bit of, again, kind of a little bit more extreme version of other characters. I'm thinking specifically of Master Roshi, right? Bulma, show me your panties. Ah! You know, and granted, that wasn't his only shtick, but it certainly left an impression.
Right. I didn't like that shtick, to be fair.
It didn't bother me.
Yeah, the weird thing is, like, ecchi humor in anime doesn't usually land well with me. And I was thinking back to Dragon Maid, which had ecchi humor, and the ecchi humor tended to be my least favorite parts. It was more, I enjoyed the nativity of the dragons and the fantastical dragons trying to adapt to our world. I enjoyed that element of that anime, but the, hey, look at my big boobs bouncing stuff wasn't what landed with me. Mm-hmm. Whereas this anime drilled down to the core of that and was like, this is what we are building on.
And actually, that was one of the big problems I had with Dragon Maid, was both the relationship between, I think her name was Luna.
Yeah, we all mentioned that in that episode for sure.
Yeah, the child, when it came to child stuff, it's like, no, for me, that's just a big, I can't do it.
And the last scene of this is just Eito wanting to use Mihari as a character because of her small breasts and them just fighting about it.
I really enjoyed that scene because the whole time he's trying to justify to her why she shouldn't be ashamed. This is actually a great thing. There are people that like this. Don't be upset. But he's doing it in the worst possible way.
Jeremy, so you have to let some of these scenes go. You can't defend every single one. So funny. You could just be like, I laughed, and let it go. I'm at this point assuming that you don't have to tell us.
Oh, but you're not delivering the punchline.
Yeah, well, I can't deliver every punchline.
There's too many.
And if you want these punchlines, you should go to anime.
You don't want to miss this.
But I will say we're now to the episode that made me laugh. And I actually really enjoyed this episode. And this is kind of a turning point in the anime for me, where I started getting lukewarm on it instead of just being like, I can't believe Jeremy is making us watch this. Eito invites all the girls to the beach, and he's like, let's go, my dime, I will take you all, I've been working extra hard and I saved up all this money, we're all going to the beach. And then so that these multiple stories are all from the beach, and the first one is they're on the waves, he's taking pictures of all the girls in their swimsuits like you would imagine he would. Ashiso ends up out in the water, and she's hit by a big wave, and her swimsuit top washes up to Eito. She calls out to him to help. He of course, I gotta save her, and see her bare breasts. Swims out to her, brings her that, and she reveals that not just the top was lost, the bottom was lost too. Eito says, no problem, take mine. Rips off his shorts and gives them to her. That started making me chuckle, and then another wave hits them, stripping everything away. This to me wasn't ecchi humor. This was just situational comedy and just building and building and building on it getting worse and worse to the point where they end up stuck naked in the ocean. And what do you do? and that I had my first laugh at this scene. Jason, you not even a chuckle?
No, I didn't laugh at this. I didn't think it was like it was fine.
Okay.
They missed the serious potential of like a shark could have bitten someone's leg off.
Wow. Or he could have just ignored her altogether and went for her bottoms. Like, where are they? I need to find them.
You're right. That would have been the logical thing to do, but
that would have fit more with the anime. I still wouldn't have laughed, but
actually, I'll be honest, it was like the first time I saw him as not a horrible person because he was helping her cover up. He took off his shorts and was like, here, cover up. He wasn't like, well, I guess you'll have to walk back to the beach, won't you? And I'll have to follow you. He was literally doing something to help her keep her decency instead of every other scene we've seen up to this point of removing decency from female characters. So this was when it started to dawn on me. He's not as bad as I've built him up to be, despite some of the horrible things I've seen.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of it. I think, like I said before, I really just wish they had done something to sell him to me early on, because at this point I was like, oh, okay, I can see that. Of course, things go bad again because we had the hot springs where they find out it's mixed bathing, and he's like, of course it's mixed bathing. Why do you think I paid to come here?
Right.
They're like, well, then you can't come in, and he begs and I'm like, fine, but you have to come in blindfolded. They blindfold him, and then they all run in and they do the hot spring stuff. Now, this is typical anime hot spring stuff. There's nothing new here, but because he's blindfolded, he trips and falls in head first, revealing his bottomness to them. And then Senna tries to drown him, and when he reaches up to find a way to escape, he grabs her breast, and she wants to kill him even more. This seems very typical of Senna. Whenever she tries to stop him, it just seems to
backfires every time.
Yeah, that's just kind of a character beat.
I love there was one line in this that was just great, and that was after he was upside down in the water and he comes back up, and they're like, how could you expose yourself like that? And he's like, oh, you guys all saw you pervs. I was like, you're such a hypocrite. I love it.
And then the final scene at the beach is where he find out he only rented one room and they all have to share a room. And they, of course, are not letting that happen. So they force him to sleep outside.
Just how casual he was. Like, even the way they drew, like, the shoulders and everything as he comes in. And they think, oh, he's just coming in to say goodnight to us. And he gets down and he starts, like, putting out the bed right next to a Shih Tzu. Just the way they handled that, the timing, the beats, the situational humor there was perfect. I loved it. This whole scene is one of my favorites.
The one thing that was interesting is Ashiso defending him in this scene. Is like, maybe he's not so bad, guys. Jason, you got something to counterpoint?
This felt like I was watching an anime version of Roy from Siegfried and Roy taking women out to a private island for free. But free meant sleep with me because I paid for your vacation.
Do you think he was actually going to have sex with any of them?
No, absolutely not. But it felt like it was, because he said on multiple occasions, I did this so I could be alone with you guys in compromising situations.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it was creepy and sleazy, and I didn't like it.
But I've seen this scenario in like dozens of animes. Like, there's almost always a hot springs episode, and then like, oh, we'll just share a room, or hey, let's peek on the girls bathing in the hot springs. This felt very much more closer to the norm.
It was honest about the character, I think, because, like, you know, you're right. Not every, but a lot of anime will have either a beach, swimsuit, or hot spring episode, and this was like, hey, let's do them all. And we'll put them all in the same, like, little mini-sode here.
And of course, this is his dream, and then watching it fall
just
apart,
crumble,
and not realizing why his dream is not working, and because there's human beings on the other end of it.
Right? Because to him, it all makes sense. Like, yeah, I got one room. It's co-ed because people do this, because people go to the hot springs and they bathe together. People do this. So in his head, I can see why the character would think that, and therefore put himself in this situation and not think it's sleazy because he draws underwear all day. So
I actually thought about, as we were describing, I was thinking about this, like, what's the big difference between this and, like, say, Is It Wrong Pick Up Chicks in a Dungeon? That scene where he falls into the water and all the women are, nude. And I think it has a lot to do with intent. In that anime, obviously there was some comedy to it, but it was definitely harem-ish. But it also felt fairly innocent because he was like, "Hey, what are we doing over here?" And then when he finds out, "Oh, we're spying on girls," he like got all awkward and he like wanted to get away. Like this felt like a sexual predator putting women in his compromising situation so he can get his jollies.
I think I said more with Jeremy on this one, where in his head, a mixed bath is the most innocent and platonic way he gets to see naked women without doing anything wrong. And
I get that. I think it's creepy.
No, it is.
I think that's the cultural clash, honestly.
Okay, that's fair.
But we need to take this to the final step where it does get creepy, and they decide to let him in, and they open the door.
Creepy. It's great.
He is rubbing their warm
underwear
into his face.
Not just one, all
of them. He's ripped them all off of the hangers, and he's laying in such a way that he's got his back to the room, right? So he has committed that they're not letting me back in. Forget them. I can't, but I have the panties because these are the closest thing to panties.
Right.
And so but his face, he turns his face. He doesn't turn his whole body, just his face. And the look he has on his face is exactly what I would expect from a dog that knows it's in trouble and it's about to get a spanking.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I was like, that was brilliant. Brilliant.
I did bad.
Physical humor. Yeah. He's like, oh, crap.
All right. Again, this is the first time I laughed. And then the next episode just made me feel bad all over again. Because episode 7, I know it's a cultural thing, but there's a point in this that made me upset. So we meet the character Sahano, who is Ashusu's little sister, and she comes to visit her big sister's work. And I liked a lot of this story of building, like, hey, I think you should date my sister. I'm worried about her. And I realized a Japanese culture thing that if she's not a successful career woman, then she better also get married. Like you have to do one or the other. And so and that she liked Eito. Success. And then to me, it showed me that, hey, Eito's a good character. But after there's a whole baby photos incident, she decides to go take a bath with Eito, the little sister. And she's like, no, it's fine. I'll wear a swimsuit. He does not. But again, this is a cultural thing that I think is more common. He has
a towel, and that's
right. He does have a towel wrapped around him, and the group baths are not that abnormal. They have the bath, they have the bathing area in Japan. But she walks in the swimsuit, looks at him, and goes, "Do I turn you on?" Mm-hmm. He goes, "Yeah, you turn me on." And I was like, "No, that is a child."
Yeah, I thought the same thing, and then I was thinking about, okay, so if you take the context into consideration of what's going on and how the girl talks on a regular basis, what she's actually saying and what he's saying in response is, am I growing into a lady? And he's like, yeah, you're growing into a lady. And I don't see it as something where he's actually like, he didn't get turned on and try to do anything.
Sexual with her. You're right. It's her saying, am I a pretty woman? Yeah, you're a pretty woman, but wrong character to do it with. Yeah, because you picked Eito to say it, and after 6 episodes of what we've seen him say, I'm going to have a hard time picking out your context right.
Yeah, the other thing that stood out to me was that her sister wasn't concerned the moment she said, I'm going to wear a swimsuit. Her sister was like, oh, yeah, that's fine then. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I understand. This is a cultural thing, and it's not like it's something that I'm just not going to get. So I have to just move on. In my head. Not saying we have to move on. We can still talk about it and say it's bad. Just say that's how I handled it.
I think Jason definitely deserves his say on this one.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting because as creepy as it felt watching this scene, specifically her scooching up to him, I guess it's implied that he is nude.
It's implied under the towel, yeah.
Under a towel.
Well, no, so in the water he's wearing a towel.
Yes.
Okay, he jumps out of the water and still has the towel on, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I missed that. But they're in the water alone in very little clothes. He didn't grope her. He didn't make advances towards her, so that kind of helped. But for some reason, I found this scene a little less worse than the park scene. Because Ashisu was like right outside the door, and she's sister, and she's listening to the whole thing, half supervision, if you will. It just doesn't sit well with me. Like, I guess just having small children, I'm really sensitive to the whole idea of like a sexual predator and children, and it's just a hot button for me. So this scene didn't land with me, but I wasn't like uber offended of it like I was the park scene.
When they're looking at the photos before this, actually, it really doesn't help the scene, is that she's showing young child photos of Ashiso in swimsuits and stuff, and he's liking them.
He's liking them. He's liking them, but I didn't get, like, when he saw Senna, and there were a lot of other times too with the other girls where he's like, kawaii, and he's not speaking sexually. So I think when he was looking at the photos, I think he was also in that mode of appreciation. I didn't get the sense that he was like sexually turned on by those.
Well, what about when she promised him the nude photos and he got like?
That is. Go ahead.
No, because it's another point. You finish, and then I'll say what I say.
Okay, so with the nude photos, I don't even know if there actually were any, and if there were some, because this girl, she's an obnoxious pervert who's trying to set him up. You can tell with the gleam that they give her in her eye and everything. They could have been baby pictures, which is usually what nude pictures are, right? And I honestly think that for him, that would have been nothing more than kawaii as well. The same way that like a relative, like an aunt or an uncle, would see a baby picture of a relative or something. I don't honestly think that he would be sexually turned on by that.
Why was he so? So I'm going to make this clear. I don't think he's a pedophile.
Yeah.
But I did find it weird that he was so enamored with the thought of naked, what it was implied, child photos of her. And he was so devastated at the loss, which made it weird.
One of the things in relationships that I know that I've experienced in the past is the closer you get to someone, the more you learn about their history. And one of the most intimate things you can learn about their history is their album. So I think that for him,
never wanted to see my wife's album.
Oh, well.
I actually agree with Jeremy. When I see like child photos of my wife, I'm like, oh, you're so cute, and you're going to grow up to be the girl I fall in love with. I could see when I'm that age having a crush on you because you're the kind of girl I would have had a crush on. I've done that. Yep. So I just want to explain the context of this whole scenario. And so you first have the photos, and he's very kawaii about them, but he is excited about these young girl photos of the girl he likes. And then he goes into a bath with another young girl who says, do I turn you on? Yeah, you turn me on. And then she's also obviously very perverted minded herself. It's all just adding up to a very, I'm uncomfortable with this right now. and I couldn't, there's just too much little things. And like you said, every single one of them has a plausible explanation. I do not think he's a pedophile. I don't think that's what the anime was trying to say. But with everything you've told me about this character and everything you've shown me leading up through this, it's like, there's no way I can watch this and be okay. Just for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I did think it was very interesting that they chose to use this as a moment for character development for him, amidst the uncomfortable nature of it.
Yeah, the crazy thing is I actually like what the sister is saying and how that's building on the relationship with Ashisu. Yeah. So I get that.
Yep. And then they end it with a really funny punchline where the sister's like, I give you permission to go and knock her on the ground and take her, hold her down and take her. And he's like, yes! And he runs out and gets clubbed. And it's like, okay, yeah, obviously he made the impulsive caricature of the worst qualities of a male decision, and he got punished for it. It was great. It was funny.
Yeah. Let's keep going.
Yeah, please.
The next one, and actually, I like this one, and I chuckled at this one, is Mihari ended up staying too late at his apartment, deciding to sleep over. And she goes and takes a bath, and she's all embarrassed because, the first time I sleep at a guy's house is going to be Eito's. And then he goes and takes a bath, and her mom calls right at that moment, and she's like, wait, I can hear Eito in the background. Oh, you're finally going to do it with Eito. Okay, I'll let you go. And and Mihari, being real embarrassed by that, and then she tries to pretend to sleep, and she feels someone crawling into the bed with her and licking her neck, and there's a moment of genuine like, okay, is this happening? Is this finally happening? And then the Suderi freaking out, and it ends up being the cat that she just pulverizes, and Ada's like, what's happening here? Like, I have nothing to do with this. This is actually why Mihari scenes work for me, is because she's kind of into it, which plays off better than please stop telling me to grab my breast.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Oh, and then the next one is when Eito tries to dress Senna into small girl clothes, and she like breaks her foot trying to kick him, and he has to piggyback ride her to the hospital and back, which ends with her about to tell him something like, "Oh, you're so nice" or something, and then he comments on touching her legs, and so she beats him up instead. Classic Eito.
Yeah, this one was one of the more boring ones, but it was a nice way to see how Senna actually is noticing that there's more to him than just the perversion.
Then the next episode we get Ashisu going to Minano, the chief editor, and giving her a manga to review, and her being like, "What's your relationship with Eito?"
This scene was so weird.
Did he grab your breast? Can I grab your breast?
I did not like this scene.
And Ashisu being like, "Well, I guess if that's going to help me get my manga," and then she grabs her breast, and then she's like, "Okay, so is that going to help your manga?" She's like, "No, I just really wanted to feel your breast. Your manga sucks."
Yeah.
The punchline's funny. I'm sorry. The punchline of "No, your manga sucks."
Yeah. Try harder. Yeah, it was really weird. Like, this was another one where I was like, I don't really understand why you're doing what you're doing. And is that just what your character is, Minata? Is like,
can I remove your bra?
Doing what's weird?
Do you think she's a female version of Eito? Is what they're trying to say? Like a wizened female version of Eito who also who thinks in the very similar ways of, I want to grow breast, not because of I want to be in a relationship with that woman, but breasts are fun to grow. Just throwing it out there, because you guys are talking like of all the scenes I've seen so far, a woman groping another woman's breast did not rub me the wrong way compared to having a child in a bath. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think the reason why it was weird was because I can't figure Minata out. Like, I can't figure her motive out. You may have something there that they're trying to show this, but I didn't get the impression that she was perverted, the most perverted in this, the things that she did, but I didn't get any sense of appreciation for them. It was like she did them like a robot. Like, her perverted things were rote.
And I agree with that, because that whole scene felt more like, how far will you let me go? How much can I get away with before you stop me? It did feel more like that than satisfaction of, I got to touch you. Because, good.
Theory, Minano has a sweet spot for Eito and is actually trying to help him score with women.
That occurred to me as well. But
I don't know how this exactly helps, but there's another scene where she makes another decision that's kind of similar, but she seems very fascinated by Eito and his relationships with these girls, and seems to like pushing the pieces and the buttons of those connections.
I honestly think you're right, because the first thing she says to her when we see the interaction is, she says, "How far have you gotten with him?" After she finds out how long you've been working with him. You've been there a year. How far has he gotten with you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why would you care? You have some kind of investment in this. I don't know that it's going to affect, if she's been working there a year, I don't think it's going to affect the eventual outcome of the manga, like whether or not he meets his editing deadlines.
Right.
That would have been something you'd have figured out a long time ago. So it has to be specifically about what you're asking. I think you're right on.
Again, this is where I came from, where I said I kind of wish it was more in the anime, as I wish there were more pieces to this puzzle, because you're right. It's a little, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
I get that.
Yeah, very much.
I really like this next scene. Oh no, I don't. I don't like this next scene. This next scene is the Ashisu walks in and he's dressed completely in women's underwear.
I loved this. This was so great.
Except for her reaction of no reaction. And I juggled that. Like, she's just gotten to the point where I don't care anymore.
That's what sold this scene to me was, up until this point, I was like, okay, so he's doing that thing. All right. Okay. And then seeing her like just walk right past him, go to her chair and start working as if nothing is out of the ordinary just made my day. And from that point on, the scene just got better.
So basically, women dress him up in drag so he can experience life as a woman for a day. And I think he was doing a voice. It was hard to tell with the Japanese accent. And I don't know. Accents obviously make my brain hurt because I'm a stupid white man. But, Chairman, you want to tell how this scene ends?
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah. So he's really trying to get into this, trying to figure out what it is to be a woman so that he can better portray that in his manga. This is very important research for him. And it's also, he's really trying to connect to it. And so they've shaved his legs. They've given him a wig. He's wearing a dress. Everything's great. He's sitting at a table. Everybody's getting kind of tired. Senna falls asleep. And, that's cute, right? She's like a little kid to him sometimes. And so he's nearby enough to hear her say in her sleep, and this was contrived clearly to make the situation, but it was great. She says, "Mama rests," or something like that, right? And the next thing you see is his blouse in the air and all the women like holding him back, and he's ripping the bra off of his chest trying to reach for Senna. And I had like a flashback to an episode of Family Guy where Peter is like, I need to experience what it's like to be a woman. And he breastfeeds Stewie, and Stewie winds up with a chest hair in his mouth trying to figure out what happened. And it was great. And so in this, like, it does the whole image effect where you've got really harsh silhouettes, and it shows her coming and she grabs a hold and then freaks out. It's just, the combo.
I didn't think they'd go all the way. I thought like for sure she's gonna wake up and hit him, and they go full mouth to nipple.
They went all the way. Great. I laughed as hard as I laughed for Family Guy when they did it.
So for me, the difference between Family Guy and this scene, I don't remember that. I may not have seen that episode. Was he like wearing one of those harnesses that has milk? Like a tube that comes down.
He just wanted to experience motherhood and put Stewie to his nipple.
Right
it's
up
like
there.
First season, old Family Guy.
Okay. I'm not saying that was any better, but in any other context, especially in America, and this might be a cultural thing, but they're both adults, and that would be sexual assault.
Yeah, you're gonna say a little rapey right here.
No. That's straight up sexual assault. Like you could file charges for that here in the States. So I was very uncomfortable by this scene. His drag, fine. I'm okay with that. He's a pervy guy, likes to wear women's clothes. Fine. That actually didn't really bother me all that much. Forcing another person onto your, I didn't like it.
So I think there's something I'm noticing, and that is separation of this fictional anime world as like a joke that has none of the implications of the real world on it, and whether or not you are willing to do that. And I'm willing to do that, but I don't think you are. I think it's totally fine. It's respectable if you don't want to do that. But it doesn't bother me because these people are not real. They are simply a portrayal of a circumstance that is supposed to shock you. And it shocked me and made me laugh. So
to be clear, you liking this anime does not affect my judgment of how I think of you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your opinions of Star Wars do.
No.
I do want to point out real quick, I think Troy is wrong on many points of his Star Wars. But anyways.
I would like to point out to Jason that I am not.
Troy is the holder of the holocubes in the archives.
I just like stirring the pot sometimes. No, just because I might find scenes offensive that you might find funny doesn't mean one of us is right or wrong.
No. I'm just curious as to why. Like I'm seeing, the reason I brought it up is I'm definitely seeing a pattern where you're looking at them and you're saying, in the real world, you would be in jail for this. In the real world, this is what would happen. And I never even considered real world implications for this. So I thought it was interesting, that difference in perspective.
I think I said it a little earlier. I'm really sensitive to sexual jokes, especially if there isn't consent, or at least perceived consent by the people involved, right? So if you have two people that are in passion and like they go under the covers and you can see them starting to get on, and then something funny happens because of some sort of incident, let's say one of them falls out and hurts themselves, or
someone poops the bed,
right? Something like that. I can usually laugh at that. Yeah, it's got sexual connotation. Something funny happened. Now they're freaking out, right? In this particular situation, like the most of these women do not like being approached by him. And it's made very clear. And this is her asleep and him doing this. And it's like, and I think the biggest problem is I'm unable to view it through that caricature lens, because I don't like caricatures of any kind.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think that's why I had a really hard time with this, is because I don't like caricatures. I don't find them interesting or funny.
And that's kind of all this is.
Yeah, and because this is one big caricature, it's tough for me to see it through that lens. So I do look at it through the lens that I'm familiar with. And what I'm familiar with is a guy going to jail for forcing a woman on him.
Yeah. That's not funny, but...
So before we move on, I'm somewhere in between again, because at this point I've realized that Ato doesn't mean this the way it looks. Like at this point, he really wants to get in the mind of a mother and know what it's like to have a woman or a baby suckle him, and she's opened herself up to this, and he's just reacting. I don't think it's as funny as Jeremy thinks, and it was. But I also wasn't offended by it, just because to me Ato has not horrible intentions. I realize in the real world that does not matter. He needs to go to prison. I 100% agree. I want to make that clear. The man's a monster. But again, we are in the context of this cartoon, and I'm not 100% sure Cena is always against.
Yeah, Senna likes him. It's pretty clear.
A little bit. It doesn't mean she did not give consent. Guys, I know.
No, not saying that, but yeah.
God, well, this is the end of Baka Baka Baka. Turns out I'm a horrible human being. I'll be
all are. Well, at least you and I are together.
Yeah.
Oh, Jason's the only one that's okay.
No, I laugh at death, so
that's true.
Won't be okay either.
That's okay. Twitter will let you do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so this next one is the one I liked. This is where Mihari is scolding him again for being behind, and he complains about it when she leaves. And Ashu says, like, well, you could just get a new editor. And he imagines this big, bulky guy being his new editor. And he works harder than he's ever worked in his life. He's completing manuscripts like 3 times ahead of time, and he works himself into he's an old gray man. And they did a very good job with the art of showing him like decaying from working so hard, and because it's just like a montage of Mihari keep coming back and collecting more work until eventually she's like, what is going on? And Asha was like, yeah, I kind of knew this would work, but not this well. And so Mihari has to tell him, like, I'm never leaving. Like, I'm in. But like she touches him, his hair turns back to its normal color. But I found this funny. This was more situational humor. There was no ecchi in this skit. So I liked this joke.
I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. But I did find this particular montage endearing because it showed how much Ayato cared for Mihara outside of what she wore under her garments and her, what her boob size were. He likes her as a person, as a friend, and did not want to lose her. And I thought that endeared to him, to the character.
Yeah, it's very telling that when they're making jokes about getting the manga done or, stuff like that, that I'm like, oh, that's good. And then as soon as they're like, yeah, but panties, I'm like, yeah, okay. The next episode is actually probably one of my favorites, is the big flashback to how Mihari cut her hair. Because they're at a high school reunion, someone asked her, like, did someone break your heart? Because that's happened in your name, too. So this must be a cultural thing that a woman breaks her heart, gets her heart broken, and cuts her hair short. Because they made the same comment in your name when she cut her hair short. Like, who broke up with you? So they ask Mihari this, and we see the flashback of, it's his first work. She's just started as his editor.
I'm sorry, it's not just in anime. It's also Kylo Ren, kind of cuts his hair when.
I've heard the cut your hair thing in American media as well.
Yeah, especially Kylo Ren.
I've never been dumped, so I've always kept my hair long.
Dog. You lucky dog.
Okay, so in the flight, like people don't hate me enough after this episode. Basically, he keeps making Eito comments at her, and she's not quite sure how to decipher them. And he even says that he loves her. So she confronts him like, "What do you mean by I love you?" And she's like, "Do you mean it?" And then as he's answering, she knocks him out as he mumbles, "Yeah, I mean it." So she's like, "Oh my gosh, he's into me." And I think I'm kind of into him. And then she's ordered by the chief editor to spend the night and make sure he gets his deadline met.
Next 3 nights.
Yeah. So she's just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be staying over at his place and things are going to happen." So she's like picking out the outfit that they're going to do stuff in, is how I took it. Like she's assuming that things are going to happen. And she goes there and then she realizes like he's working himself to the bone and like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Deadlines are hard and require work." Stuff. So she goes to change and like he's like, "Can I come in?" She's like, "Oh my God, he's going to see me." And she lets him come in, wanting him to see her, but he's not even looking. He wants something else. He's doing more work.
No, he's grabbing panties from a basket. So for reference,
okay, that's still work for Eito. That's hard work.
No, but that's what makes the scene funnier, is because
he cares more about the panties than the naked woman.
Here's this half naked woman, but he needs to like get reference material.
And then he freaks out when he sees her naked and like, "Why are you naked?"
Yep.
Basically this keeps going on and she's very distracted, and when he finally gets the work done, she spills ink and ruins the manuscripts. And she's like, "Oh, I have to quit. I ruined this. This isn't your fault and I had to resign." And he tells her, "No, I'll get it done." Even though like he's already like chinks are sunken, he's half dead, but he keeps going and he gets it done on time for her. And so she goes and cuts her hair as a mental note to let go of thoughts of relationships and being with Eito in that way so that she doesn't ruin his career. Mm-hmm. This was, kind of deep for what we've had so far. It was good character building, and this sold me on Eito because this is like one of the first redeeming qualities we've gotten from him since he offered his shorts at a beach.
I loved her imagination. Like when she was in this scene and she was, I think she was still imagining going over to his house or something. And she's like, "What's going to happen? What's going to happen?" And she's imagining the circumstance, and in her mind, they're having a conversation, and she's like, she says, I wrote it down because it was so funny to me. She says, "No, my breasts are small. The only thing we should make together is manga." And he says, "I want you." In English, no less. It's in English.
He did say that in English.
And I was laughing so hard because just the absurdity of what she had built in her mind of this time together as editor and employee was hysterical. And the way that she applied it, just even the terminology they used, it was really, really funny to me. But you're right. As this and the previous episode were both endearing about Mihari especially, and were kind of what gave her the flavor that up till this point I kind of thought she was lacking.
Yep. Any thoughts on this one, Jason?
It was fine.
Okay. That's the best he's going to get.
That's amazing.
Basically at the end, then as back in the real time, she says, "Hey, if we're still single in 10 years, I will date you."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go a little bit faster here because a lot of these we've mentioned. There's the episode where Senna and him get stuck in an elevator.
One of my favorite episodes.
And he offers an empty water bottle to pee in, and there's a whole discussion of... And then eventually she's like, I just have to murder you because you can't know me as the girl who peed. And then he's like, "You're right. You do have to murder me." That I liked. And then, of course, when he finally convinces her to pee into the water bottle, he's holding it for her.
Why is that?
Yeah,
Was
what?
That
why
was
does she need
funny.
the? Why does she need the lead
to Ben?
That was what, like, I made Tanya come out and watch this whole scene because I was just laughing so hard. Because, okay, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Let's be honest. Have you ever made that joke? Like, where you're like, you find out that your significant other, she has to go to the bathroom, but you're in a really inconvenient place. Like, you're in a car on the highway or something, and you're like, well, got a water bottle. It's a terrible joke, right? It's crass. It's rude. It's male. And it's a joke. And so when I saw him say that and he held up the water bottle, I was like, no, they're not going there. And as I'm watching, it's just building and building. And then they actually hit the crescendo and they show you how ridiculous that they can make this scene work. Oh, this was great. And so, yeah, she was saying the same thing. Why is he helping her? He doesn't need to help her.
That was confusing. This was the only scene that made me half chuckle, and I almost cracked a smile because she's so terrified of wetting herself in front of him, and so to try and make her feel better, he says, "Well, I'll just have to wet myself too."
I laughed when the elevator doors open right before she peed.
Yeah.
And now she's still there. And I'm like, cause that's very classic sitcom. Yep. And it wasn't that hard to see that joke coming, but it was still good, well delivered. And then she runs off the pee.
Yeah. Why she had to hold her. I don't know.
Just for the joke.
The next segment is the one we were talking about with Rina and the bunny suit, which we already went over. Then the next one is, I actually really like this one. Ashiso getting stuck in the rain, and as soon as he realizes she's stuck in the rain, he runs at her to share an umbrella with her, and then realizes she brought an umbrella, and then he has to walk next to her holding an umbrella and being like, I want her to share one. She's like, why? Because it's nice. Yeah. And then they talk about relationships and stuff. And
I think that's actually a thing too. Like, sharing an umbrella is significant, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I thought
because I didn't get this until you just said that.
Yeah, sharing an umbrella is significant. Mm-hmm.
They show a lot of couples walk by them also sharing umbrellas, and he's very wistful. It's again another sign that this is the girl of the harem that he wants a relationship with. He didn't run to give anyone else an umbrella. He wanted to share an umbrella. So, and then he's asking her about her love life, and he's like, you can ask me questions. She's like, no.
Actually, that was the best part of this scene.
That was great.
He's just like, I have no interest in you.
Yes. Yep.
The next scene, the next episode, and first scene is him getting very upset that Mahari has changed. And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, your breasts have grown. And she runs, 2 millimeters. And
he noticed that.
He's like, you're so ruined. This is the best part of you. And she's like, look, I'm only going to get to an A cup. And then they both celebrate.
Yeah. Hooray! I thought it was great. I thought it was great because when she's first introduced, we know that this is an issue for her because he actually has to express that.
Yeah, this is a running joke.
This is a running joke for her through the whole thing. And so this is actually character development for her.
A big moment for her.
Development.
And so just the idea, like earlier he had said, what makes it so great about you is that you're embarrassed. If they were regular sized or bigger, you wouldn't be embarrassed. And that's what I'm loving is the fact that you're embarrassed, which is funny.
The next one is Senna when she visits with the liquor candy and is drunk and decides she wants to wash because he's cat sitting like a dozen cats, and she decides she wants to give them all a bath, and he's like, that's a horrible idea, they're cats. And she's like, I'm doing it. And she strips down naked, and Branya makes an appearance to cover her. And,
oh god, yeah.
And then so the rest of the thing, she just has a cat like attached to her front and then is
with
trying
the tail
to wash
wrapped to protect that area too.
And then he's outside the bathroom like yelling encouragement like, you wash those cats, and eventually she does.
So this was probably one of the weakest as far as humor wise for me.
Yeah, we can just move on.
Well, but I did want to say that I could understand where she was coming from with washing cats though. Have you guys ever tried to wash a cat when it didn't want to be washed?
I would never do that.
No.
What cat wants to be washed?
Well, I remember I had a cat where I took it in. We had this great big shop.
Sure, there's a story.
You are not going to let me end this podcast ever, are you?
Short. I took it in, and that thing grabbed me by the throat, man. Its claws were so deep in my throat. It took forever to get them out. So I understand where she
tell her this cat story.
I have.
Okay. Ashiso gets a manga rejected again, but this is the scene where she figures out, she comes up with inspiration for it after he gives her some advice, and she teases him and like uses his own perviness against him for like the first time ever, and is actually really mean to him, and gets called out on it by Mihari eventually, but uses this as inspiration to write a manga about a woman who tortures her pathetic boss.
And what was interesting about it is how much she was enjoying it as well.
Yeah, she was.
Like
it kind of ties back.
Yeah, that is a little messed up, but I could see the vindictive revenge going on. Well,
it kind of ties into the last episode's description of her.
Right. Then in the final episode, so it starts off with she gets her manga done that she had started. She gives it to Mahari. Mahari's like, yeah, this is pretty good, but it's not great. You could enter it into a contest, but it's not enough for a debut. It really needs to be redrawn. And Aito's like, I'll help you redraw it. Let's do this. And so they agree. As she's drawing, he's giving her tips. He's like, no, you need to be more fierce, more erotic. No, let your inhibitions out. Go full out. What's really funny is when the deadline comes up and Mihari comes again to visit, she's like, what about your manga? He's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I laughed really good at that one. That moment got me. And so yeah, they work side by side and they both get their deadlines done. Then they wait anxiously. They find out she did win the awards, but her manga is so erotic that it cannot be featured in the magazine. So her debut will not happen. So it's a step forward for her, but she doesn't quite reach the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move to a scene of them, summer's end, fireworks, watching the fireworks together and talking about how she didn't make it and their relationship. And it really just kind of reveals that he wants a relationship with her, but he's happy with just being with her as they are, which I liked. I really kind of wish we'd been told this 12 episodes ago. But you can't, it's the ultimate character evolution. And then we get our final segment, which is all about panties and personalities. He deciphers everyone's personality based on the panties they wear. What is Ashiso is that she has some frilly, sexy panties, so she has a deep inner desire for sexiness, but is
to be pervy.
Yeah, mostly calm and peaceful. Yeah. Mihari with two-tone panties, so she's a tsundere. Mm-hmm. And then Minano shows up, and she's like, I'm commando. Because of course she is.
She's such a weirdo.
And then they all decide, like, what do you wear? And this really stupid, but it made me laugh. They hold him down. Ashiso, like, opens his pants, and I'm like, that's a horrible idea. Like, what do you think's gonna pop out? Like, have you met a guy?
Don't do this.
But Rina bumps her in the back, and she face plants into his crotch. Because Rina laughed very hard.
Yeah, because Rina's like, I have to save him. This is wrong. You can't do this to him. Yeah, and there's this golden light, like
you can't see anything. There's a golden glow, and she drops into his crotch, and I'm like, did they just say it like?
And the mouth agape, by the way. Mouth agape, by the way.
Yeah, right. And the golden glow is just gone.
So, but she pulls back. She's horrified, and they reveal that he's covered. And what does he wear? Tidy whities, because he has a pure heart.
Yep. Every man.
Again, I chuckled. And then the crowning achievement of this anime, probably the best thing they did, is a musical video of Aito singing an ode to panties.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the end of this anime.
Crowning achievement.
This song is so earned. If they had this at every episode, if I watched this at the beginning, I would not have enjoyed it. watching it after everything we learned about him, it totally fits. He totally earned it. Yeah. Have your ode to panties, dude.
Yep. So there's 4 OVAs, and we should plan to watch those for a mini-sode sometime.
Not happening. There's no way.
I'm sick that week.
Week? There's 4.
We need to go to final reviews. Jeremy, you get to lead us off.
So my review is 4 Bakas out of 5. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It had its weird spots. It had its awkward spots. Very few of the jokes actually landed flat for me. I enjoyed the vast majority of them. And, you know, I saw something. I'll just throw it in very swiftly here. I saw something that I think is there, and it does. If it is, it offers a little bit more depth to the series as a whole. And that is that if you look at the panels on Ashisu's, I can never say her name right, Ashisu's drawings for her manga, both of them look like scenes that we see in this anime where he's being stomped on by Senna or he's being whipped by Senna. And the manga itself is called Punishment, and it's about a boss being teased, she specifically says, by his workers. And so I kind of get the impression that maybe what we're seeing as an anime is the eventual product of all her hard work in manga design and manga creation. And if so, that would be really, really cool because it's kind of a weird connection and
very meta.
Very meta.
It also would be cool to imagine that this is all from her, told from her point of view and pushed to an extreme. Like he wasn't this bad, but to sell the manga. And she like, yeah, he didn't actually tell me to grow my breast. He did ask,
can I? Because
can I grow breasts? I told him no. We went back to work, but you know, it's funnier if I extrapolate from that.
That's what I was thinking too.
I probably would have given this a little more of a pass if that was actually true, or you know, it might be, but
yeah, I don't know. But I definitely say again, if that first line gets you. While you're watching the anime, not me saying it because, you know, you have no context and no art to go with it. But if that line gets you, you'll probably enjoy it. If it doesn't, it just may not be your cup of tea.
Jason, your review?
Which is not my cup of tea. I give it a 1. I did not enjoy my time with it. I thought it just all the things I said in the beginning. I didn't think it was very funny. But it was only half as long as a normal anime, so
shouldn't that be an extra point?
There we
go. I will. It probably deserves a 2, and I'm going to give it a 3 for the panty song.
Yes,
and just nailing that joke, and not overusing it. Like they could have overplayed their hand with that, and they didn't. And I respect that. I respect holding that card till the very end. Like I said, it took me a long time to get past what this was to see it for what it actually was, and half the humor didn't land with me, half the humor did.
So hopefully our palates are a little bit refreshed with something stupid and silly to go from like Madoka Magica's seriousness back into a more serious anime. Is this what is that a serious one we're watching next?
Yes. So we are watching next Inuyashiki, also known as Cyborg Grandpa. That sounds silly, but it's not. It is the story of an old man and a teenage boy or a young man who both die to I believe a UFO landing on them, and they come back to life with robot bodies, and they both take very different paths what they do with it. Now, this is made by the creator of Gantz, and Jeremy's a huge fan of Gantz, and Gantz is very mature, so I probably need to give a mature warning for this anime. Gantz gets very gory sometimes, I believe, and very dark. I don't know much about what happens in this anime, but I do know there's a good chance we can get into some heavy, mature stuff. So just warning you guys now. Rather be safe than sorry.
For those of you who were expecting us to watch Fate Apocrypha, the next part of that next, we just made a minor error in calculations, and it's not quite available yet.
That'll be next. Part 2 will be after Inuyashiki, because
can't wait.
Hasn't released it yet.
Oh, I'm sure it will be okay.
What a party pooper! That's like when someone just can't enjoy Star Wars.
Star Wars. was great.
Okay. If you want to comment on anything other than Star Wars, you can reach us on Twitter at Baka Podcast. Our email is theanimebakaclub@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment wherever you found this podcast. We are out of time. We got to go, so let's say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Panty psychology, it's a science.
Sayonara.